right, so welcome everybody to the Parapsychology online conference. Thank you so much for joining us. So good morning, good afternoon and good evening, depending on where you are. I'm really excited. We've got quite a few interesting guest speakers, including one international guest speaker and 2 Australian guest speakers. First, I have to really apologise on behalf of Sarah Lemos. She is really sick and can't speak today. So yeah, I'm a bit sad about that, but that means that we've got more time with the speakers and more time for Q&A. So my name is Joyce Bock. I am working as a psychologist for Soul Psych in Bunbury, Western Australia. I'm also Vice President of the Australian Institute of Parapsychological Research, or the AIPR, and also I run salubrious events. So just a little bit of housekeeping, if we could put ourselves on silent until we are speaking or asking a question. And we will have a break in between each talk. Yes, so I just want to talk a little bit about the AIPR. So again, it's the Australian Institute of Parapsychological Research, founded in 1977 as a non-profit scientific and community society. We advocate the use of scientific methods and promotes research and public education into parapsychological phenomena. The AIPR holds that psychic experiences should be studied in the same way as other human experiences. Evidence should be evaluated accurately and compassionately. We offer online courses and we have a journal, the Australian Journal of Parapsychology, which is published twice a year for $70. You can also join as a supporter, $10 a year, and you get a newsletter and early bird discounts to online events like this. We also support, we also offer short-term community support. So if anybody's distressed due to paranormal experiences, or want to ask a question, we can offer sort of one-off or short-term support, given that we're all busy and volunteers. We also offer more in-depth services with each of our members if you require. So we have, myself, I'm a psychologist. We have a paranormal investigator, Vlad is one of them. We have Rob Tilley, who is a Ghostbuster, or he clears haunted spaces. And we have our academic, Dr. Lance Storm. Usually we have a mini conference every year in Sydney on the first Saturday of December. However, thanks to COVID, we had to postpone that, but we will resume that as soon as we are able to. So yeah, I'd like to introduce our president, Dr. Vladimir Dubai, to say a few words. Vlad?
Yes, hello. Thank you. I just want to welcome everybody here today for the conference. I think Joyce has already mentioned a few things about the AIPR. I was just going to quickly cover some of the AIPR and what we do. So clearly we've been around for a long time. The foundation, I guess, of the AIPR really is with Lance Storm and Rob Tilley. They've been carrying and improving in the AIPR over the years. It's getting better and better, and they offer services. We have our own journal, which publishes research papers. We have our own grants, so we do small grants for research purposes. There's the newsletter. We've just created an online forum where members can come in and ask questions. So it's a live forum, get some advice and opinions and so on. So there's lots of, also there's short courses and certificate courses in parapsychology. So there's lots of things to have a look at, lots of resources. So yeah, feel free to have a look at the website. And naturally, part of that is the education part, and this is kind of the culmination of the education. We have these regular conferences, and Joyce, who's a very integral member of the group. She also runs her salubrious events, and this is essentially how we've all come together here. So we've got some great speakers, some really interesting speakers. So it's actually a pity that Sarah couldn't make it today. And I have a discovered appreciation of Joyce's organization abilities, because just like literally 3 days ago, I tried to organize a simple dinner for about 5 or 6 people. We haven't seen each other for about a year at least, due to lockdown and COVID. And inadvertently, I had scheduled it for the Mother's Day Sunday without knowing about it. So I sent off emails and text messages and LinkedIn messages to all these people saying, hey, let's all meet up on a Sunday on the 7th of May. I gave them the wrong dates. Everyone had kind of started agreeing. Everyone's going, yes, yeah, sure, we'll meet up on that date. Then I had to send them another email saying, oh, I'm sorry, I actually got the wrong date. It's actually this particular day. And then someone mentioned, oh, hang on, that's Mother's Day weekend. And all of a sudden it all blew up out of, all over the place. So then I'm backtracking, sending out more emails saying, oh, actually, sorry, we can't really do it this day. Long story short, there's a long sequence of messages on LinkedIn, on Messenger, Facebook, emails and stuff, me getting progressively more and more desperate, trying to sound casually calm. And at the end of the day, I had not organized anything. There's no dinner organized. All I had managed to sow was mass confusion and used up a lot of ibuprofen. So I have a really, great respect for Joyce and her ability to actually put all this together with international speakers and local presenters with really interesting material. So thank you to Joyce and the speakers themselves for actually contributing their knowledge, their experience and their wisdom and sharing that with us today. Okay, so yeah, greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Vlad. Yes, I think events is one of the hardest things I had to do. You need contingency plans, and anything and everything can go wrong. So, but hopefully, other than Sarah, everything will run smoothly today. A quick hello to Alex, who is our out-of-body experience specialist, just to say hello. Alex?
Hi, everyone. Just quickly say hi. Good to be here, and yeah, looking forward to the presentations today. Thanks, Joy, for organizing everything.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Alex. All right, great. So we've got a wonderful lineup, scientific research in hands-on healing, past life healing, near-death experiences and medical healing. Really excited to introduce our international speaker, Bill Bengston, or William Bengston. He's a professor of statistics and research methods at St. Joseph's College in New York and the president of the Society for Scientific Exploration, an international group of scientists who study anomalies. Dr. Bengston's research has produced the first successful full cures of transplanted memory cancer. And I can't really say this word, methylcholanthrene-induced sarcomas in mice by energy healing techniques that he helped to develop. He has also investigated assorted correlates to healing, such as EEG and MRI entrainment, and geomagnetic micropulsation anomalies in healing space. His current work involves the attempt to reverse engineer healing and reproduce healing without the healer. So can we put it in a jar and use it for later? So I'm really excited to introduce Bill Bengston. He will talk about turning the unconventional into the conventional, some experiments capturing healing intention. Take it away, Bill.
Thank you. Nice to be here, and thanks for the invitation. Let me see if I can get this thing to work. Thanks for the invitation, and nice to be here and all that. And I think we're ready to go. The title, of course, is Turning the Unconventional into the Conventional. And another way to put that is I've been working for some time trying to figure out how to make the paranormal normal. There's been too much polarization and too many people spouting silly things back and forth and without knowing what they're talking about. And the paranormal, to make the paranormal normal, I think you have two possible routes. One is the scientific route, which is come up with a good theory that explains all this stuff and makes it normal. And I have to tell you that I've been working on this stuff for 105 years, and I'm not close to getting a theory. I don't know anybody who's got a good theory. I don't know anybody who really understands how all this weird stuff works. But it doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means we don't understand how it works. So door number one is a way to make this unconventional conventional, is to come up with a good scientific model of how the world works that includes this stuff. And, you know, again, I'm not holding my breath on this. The second thing to do is to make something practical. In which case, if you have something seriously practical, most people don't care how it works as long as it works. And I've taken that second route. I'd give almost anything for the first route, but I have to tell you that I'm not close. I'm not getting closer. And the anomalous stuff that many parapsychologists talk about and that I talk about in healing, the stuff works. I can make it reliable. I can make it do stuff, but I can't really understand it based on the training that I've had. And so until someone comes up with a better conceptual model or a better theory, we're stuck with stuff that that doesn't make sense. And the way to convert people, I think, is to make it practical. And I'm working on making it practical. So let's cut to the bottom line and say if this works. Nope. It's not working. Oh, I got it to go. Okay. Bottom line, I'm cutting to the take-home message. And then we're talking about healing now. If you're going to make it healing conventional, we need a theoretical model that's going to fit in with our understanding of how medicine and healing generally works. I'm not close on that. Or we need to make this thing very practical. And that's the route I'm going to take tonight. So in order to make it conventional, in order to make it practical, healing needs to be both storable. We have to show that healing can be stored, and we have to show that healing can be scaled. And so keep those two things in mind: storability, scalability. I'm going to show you some data that'll give you a sense of storing, and then I'm going to show you some data that'll give you a sense of scalability, and I'll show you what I'm up to now, at least as an ongoing research project. So when we think of healing, most of the time we think of a healer and a healee, whatever the term's supposed to be. But you got a healer and a healee. Now this is all nice and it's good, and there's wonderful anecdotes, and there's very few really systematic studies on it. But it's not practical in the sense that, how many healers are there? I mean, I don't know. Let's say there's a boatload of healers. There's more than a boatload of people who need healing. And there's a virtually inexhaustible supply of people in pain out there. And no matter how many healers there are, no matter how many methods of healing we have, and no matter how much we show that they work or they don't work, or they work under these circumstances, or whatever it is that we show, there's not enough healers to go around for the number of healees who need help. So in order to make this thing conventional, we need to make it, again, storable and scalable. The storable comes, we're used to this, so here we have a battery. And what's a battery? Well, we're taking a process of nature, a phenomenon of nature, electricity, and we're sticking it in a box. And we can go, and we got a bunch of that stuff in a box, and we can go use it, and we hook up the right stuff to it, and we can use it. That's storable. We're used to storable. That's different from scalable. So if this were the only box and it stored electricity, it'd be storable but not scalable. But the good news is, of course, batteries are scalable. So we can make a prototype battery, and then we can kick out a boatload of batteries, and it becomes storable and scalable. And so we walk around with a little electricity in our pockets. We can walk around, we can apply them, we can put them in stuff, and we're used to this. And so it's normal, even if you don't understand how electricity works. Now, I deal with a bunch of theoretical physicists, and if I ask them what an electron is, they're going to get into a fist fight. Nonetheless, nobody denies there's such a thing as electricity. I'm trying to do the same thing with healing. So we're used to storing and scaling, even if we don't understand. And we store and scale a bunch of stuff. So we have physical stuff that we store and scale. We've got nutrients that we store and scale. So we go to the cabinet in the morning and we take a multivitamin. What is that? It's stored nutrients and vitamins and all this other kind of stuff. And we can make a boatload of those. We can store it and we can scale it. Can we do the same thing with healing? That's the question. So the plot that I want to talk to you about is, I'll give you a quick background to some of my healing studies, only a couple, and then I'm going to show you some experiments in storability, and then I'm going to show you some experiments in storability and scalability. And we'll see that this is a reasonably new field, but it's got pretty good promise going along. So I've been doing research in anomalous healing that doesn't make any sense, for, again, 105 years or so. And I've been looking into parameters of healing. And so parameters of healing are kind of obvious things. Does distance matter? You know, that kind of stuff. And the answer, of course, does distance matters? No. But I can demonstrate, you know, I can back this up with data, independent labs. Healing doesn't diminish with distance. Now, what in heaven's name doesn't diminish with distance? I mean, just take 2 seconds, and here's where we get into the paranormal and some of the things that drive people crazy. Healing doesn't diminish with distance. If I do an experiment in healing cells or healing mice or healing people or healing whatever we're doing the experiment on, it makes no difference whether the person's or the mouse or the cage is right in front of me or it's across the world. So we could stick a cage in Australia and zap it from here, and we get the same effect as if I'm in New York, do it in New York and zap it 2 inches away. It can't be energy. You know, energy healing is called energy healing, but there's no energy. Give me a break. If there were energy, the way that the data come to pass it doesn't make any sense. But we have parameters of healing. Doesn't diminish with distance. Does belief matter? You know, that's another parameter of healing. And the answer is it might a little bit. I mean, my guess is, and I wouldn't take this to the bank, but my guess is all other things being equal, that's a statistician's cop-out, all other things being equal, probably belief retards healing. That would be my guess. It's better to have a non-believer than a believer. A non-believer, all other things being equal, I think will heal faster and have a more robust response. I think a non-believing healer also will be a better healer than a believing healer. I mean, I know that's heretical, but I have some data to back that up. I've looked into the physiology of healing. I've looked into what happens to the brain, what happens between healer and healee. I got a bunch of functional MRI data and EEG data and all that stuff. I'm looking into teaching efficacy. Can we pass this along? The fourth bullet is the scientific motherlode, development of a theoretical model. And I got to tell you, I'm not close. I don't know anybody who's close. I've met people who think they understand how this stuff works, but you can tear down their models in about 1.5 minutes. And so I'm focusing now, tonight, and as well as in my daytime research, practical applications. Can we capture and reproduce and scale without the healer? So I don't understand it. Let's say I don't understand gravity. Well, I don't, you know, some people believe it's curved space. Some people think it's gravitons. Some people think it's this, but there's gravity. You'd have to be an idiot to say there's no such thing as gravity. We can argue about why it is, but it is. I think healing is similar. You don't argue about whether healing happens. Give me a break. But can we make it into something useful, even if we don't understand it? That's my goal. So sometimes I write in normal language for normal people. Most of the time I don't. And I let me contradict myself. I have a book called The Energy Cure. And I just got finished saying there's no energy. It turns out the publisher, sounds true, when I said, they showed me the cover and they said, we want to call this The Energy Cure. And I said, I don't think there's any energy. They didn't care. They said, thanks for your input, you know, but they completely ignored me. If you're interested in my healing stuff, and this isn't a sales technique, if you're interested in the healing stuff, I don't keep things proprietary. I don't have things in the, you know, the inside pocket vest kind of a thing. And if you want to go do your own experiments and replicate what I'm talking about here, This will teach you how to do it. So if you want to learn, here it is, laid out with practice and drills and practice. Most of the time, though, I write for, whoops, going the wrong way. Most of the time, I write for geeks, and I write stuff that nobody reads. So I have a boatload of academic publications, and they're reasonably interested. They're kind of geeky, and you wouldn't want to take some of them to the beach. But I have a bunch of them, and if you want any of them, you can see it. I don't know, there's 30, 35 more perhaps publications on my website, and you can go read some of the geeky things that'll back up the stuff that I'm talking about here. So I want to talk about some background stuff and show you really the plot in just a couple of minutes. And I'm going to focus on my cancer experiments because I've done more cancer experiments than anything else. And one of the reasons you can do it is you can make a very nice experimental model with cancer. It's easy to do. Many people have done it, and you can build on past research. The other reason that cancer is an interesting phenomenon is that from a healing point of view, it's extremely responsive. Cancer responds to healing. Some stuff, not so much. Cancer responds. And actually, the more aggressive the cancer, it turns out the faster and easier it is to fix. So we try different kinds of cancers which aren't particularly strong, which aren't particularly aggressive. They're hard to do. You come in with a freight train cancer that's seriously aggressive and seriously lethal, much easier to do. We may talk about that later. Anyway, here are some experiments. These are cancer experiments on mice. I've got a bunch on mice, 19 or 20 experiments. I've got a bunch on cell cultures. I've got some studies on people. I've got some studies, but I'm going to talk to you quickly about mice stuff. So I've done a lot of work with mammary cancers. And at City University of New York, I have 2 experiments. At St. Joseph's College, I have 2 experiments. This is all on mammary cancers in mice. Arizona State University, 1. Indiana University Med School, 3. Brown University Med School, 5. Sarcomas, University of Connecticut Med School, I have 2 on that. Oncogenic mice, University of California, San Diego. Nude mice, Brown University Med School. Extremely aggressive cancers at Wake Forest Med School. And breast cancer studies, bladder cancer studies, and melanomas that I just finished at Tokyo University. And so I'm calling on not speculation, but some serious multiple labs getting the same stuff regardless of where I am. And I'm going to show you just a quick excerpt from some mammary cancer and give you an idea of the plot. So what I do, because I think in very simple terms, I take something that's already thought to be known and I introduce a single variable. The mammary cancer that I've studied is the single most studied cancer ever. And so anybody in oncology will know this. Forget the geeky stuff that's up there. The thing that matters is the last line, a month. We'll just round it out and call it crudely a month. And what that means is nice and simple. You take these mice, you'll see a couple of them now. You take these mice, you inject them with cancer, certain amount of cancer, a certain kind of mouse, and they're all dead in a month. And that's the bottom line. And then medical researchers come in and they try, let's give them chemotherapy, let's give them radiation, let's give them vitamin C, let's take them off vitamin C, let's do whatever we're going to do. And we try to see what happens, and we try to extend, or we try to change the shape of the curve. You go from a normal curve to a negatively skewed distribution. You say, I've made a breakthrough. Can we break it? Can we get any mice to go past a month? You know, we'd have a breakthrough, that kind of stuff. And when I got into this and using stuff that's off the shelf, meaning everybody in oncology knows this stuff, it's off the shelf, the mice are going to die in a month. 100% of the mice are going to die in a month. No mouse has ever lived past a month. And there's over 2,000 publications on these mice. So this is something thought to be known. And then you have someone like me come in and say, let's run what you already know and what you've run many, many times, and let's introduce healing and see what happens. Does it change the distribution? Does it change how long they live? You know, what happens? And so this particular kind of cancer is ugly, but it's easy to study. And it doesn't metastasize, and it grows pretty ugly, and this is a tumor. I mean, this is huge. It's eating the leg. You can see the furs falling out. If you could see the eyes, nobody's home. You don't have to be a biologist to say this is not a happy mouse, and this mouse was probably dead by the end of the day. And so this is what happens without exception in thousands and thousands of mice studied in many, many different places. And then I come along and I say, let's introduce healing and see what happens. So here's a picture of me acting as a healer. I'm not a healer, but here's me pretending I'm a healer at Brown University, putting my hands over a cage of cancerous mice. My volunteer healers are never healers. They're ordinary folks who learn my method and then say, I don't believe any of this nonsense. And I say, beautiful, go out and do it anyway. They're not believers. They're not practitioners. They can follow instructions. And so I have faculty members who act as healers. They don't believe the stuff. I have students who act as healers. They don't believe the stuff. And I introduce that to the model that's already understood. So if you do this, interesting things happen. The tumor starts to open up, it ulcerates, and it gets very big, and it looks like it's very ugly. But now I call your attention to something that's pretty interesting. Look at the coat here. The coat's good. The coat's clean. If you could see the eyes are clean. This mouse, I don't have the pictures of this mouse to follow up, but this mouse with apparently an ugly thing stayed in the cage completely happy, hanging out, not a complaint in the world, running around the cage, having fun, until eventually this tumor implodes, and it implodes very suddenly, and the mice live their normal lifespan. And so it's not a remission, it's a cure. And we've done this on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mice. Reasonably interesting. So no mouse has ever made it past a month. We go to full cure and they live 2 years. And we take it even farther than that. Once they've been treated and once they've gone to cure, we can re-inject them for the rest of their life and they can't get cancer. Now let that sink in. The mice have the memory or the information on how to beat cancer. And it came through the healing process. And from my point of view, the question becomes, can we take this information that's now in the mouse and use it to make a cure? That would be a practical, scalable application. Could we make, for example, a vaccine? And the answer, I think, is yes. Would we be allowed to use it? I doubt it. But could we make it? Nah, I think we know enough now to make it. So I do this with various types of mice and various types of cancers and various types of labs. And in all, wherever we go, we take different kinds and we introduce the single variable of healing and we watch, see what happens. And we find cures all over the place. And so if we look at a really crude list of things that I've looked into, I can say with independent labs, we can make healing reliable. Doesn't mean we can store it, it means we can make it reliable. Doesn't mean we can scale it, but we can make it reliable, as long as you got somebody doing the healing. I can state and defend, not tonight, but I can defend that there's a dose response to healing. That if you do very, very little, you're going to notice that you needed a little bit more. And so there is a modelable dose response which occurs in healing. Healing proceeds not in a linear manner. It goes in sudden bursts. And so you'll be going along, you'll have a mouse hanging out, and it looks ugly, it looks ugly, it looks ugly, and then suddenly the tumor implodes. The same thing happens incidentally with people. And this is one of the problems of making this conventional. People confuse healing with magical thinking. And so, you know, I've heard healing called spiritual. I don't know what that means, but if you're expecting magic and expecting instantaneous magic, you may not hang around long enough. What I've found is sudden bursts is the process that healing occurs. So you're going along, you got a tumor, you got a tumor, you got a tumor, and then it's gone. Whether that's an animal, a vegetable, or a human. Healing is fundamentally information, it's not energy. I can show you a resonant bond between healer and healee, at least as measured by brain phase locking. I can tell you with reasonable certainty that a particular state of mind doesn't matter. You don't have to be spiritual, you don't have to believe, you don't have to get all gushy, you don't have to be flopping on the floor doing this, thinking you're doing something special. Healing can be as routine as walking across the street. And I can keep going with this and going on and going on. But you get that idea of the general plot. It's not a question, do you believe in healing? I don't understand the question. There are patterns, there are reliable patterns. We can do them in independent labs. Healing happens, and let's see if we can turn it into something that is practical. So the focus, eventually I get there, can we store and reproduce? Question 1. Question 2, can we make it scalable? So first I'll show you storing and reproducing, then I'll show you scalability. Use a couple of different things. Going back to the great Bernard Grad from McGill University, I just ripped off his ideas, but he has demonstrated that cotton in particular is a good storage medium for healing. In other words, way back in the 60s, Grad found that a healer holding a piece of cotton, just ordinary cotton, holding a piece of cotton, that cotton that has been held by the healer can be used as a surrogate to reproduce the healing without the healer. And so the first question is, does cotton store healing? Get a separate question from, can you make it scalable? But can cotton store healing? And we have gobs of experiments to show that, yes, cotton can store healing. So it's an organic material, it stores healing. You can have healing intention, and then you apply that healed cotton, and you can put it on a mouse and you get results. You can put it on a person and you get results. It can be stored. And I've done some genomic stuff. I take a bunch of cotton and we put some cancer cells in a dish, a well plate, and we bring the cancer cells and we put them over the charged cotton, and the cancer cells genomically change. Now that's interesting, and it happens reliably. You can do it, you know, over and over, independent labs. It doesn't make any difference where you do it. You're going to have significant changes and protein folds and p-values and all this other kind of thing if you bring cancer cells near charged cotton. Of course, if you put cancer cells near ordinary cotton that hasn't been charged, nothing happens. Another organic material that we've played with is we've played with treating the cell medium itself. So you go into an in vitro lab and you're playing with cells and such. You got to have a nutrient in which the cells grow and thrive, et cetera, et cetera. And so we don't treat the cells, we treat the medium that's fed to the cells. In other words, has the healing been stored because the medium store the healing intention? And it turns out, yes, it does. We can take these and give the treated medium and give them to cancer cells, and we have wild changes in growth. Now, this is interesting. What we average is about a 600%. I mean, you don't need to do statistics for this. We have about a 600% increase in the growth rate of cancer if we treat the medium and put the cancer cells in the treated medium. The cancer, it just has a field day. It loves it. It starts to reproduce wildly. It's obviously responding to a stimulus. And the effect is not subtle. Now, some people get upset at that. They go, you know, shouldn't you be killing cancer? No, this is healing. There's a difference between healing and killing. Why would you kill cancer? You would rather heal the organism, yes? And so this is actually one of the few hypotheses I've ever gotten right. I said, if we're treating a medium and we're giving it to cancer cells, the cancer cells should like it, because then our client, our healee, is a cancer cell. And what does cancer like to do? It likes to reproduce. And so it follows cancer should increase its reproduction if submitted to the influence of healing. If it's put into an organism, it'll react completely differently. But if it's just as a cancer cell and the cancer cell is your client, the cancer cell should get what they want. What does it want? It wants to reproduce. If you take that souped up cancer and put it into a mouse, then it should collapse because it goes to the higher order need of the organism. It's not what you want. From a parapsychological, since I'm talking to a parapsychological group here, or a parapsychology group, healing should never be confused with PK. Let's say I want a psychokinetic effect on something. I want to move an object. I want to move a cancer cell. I want to move a mouse. I want to do something like that. This is, using it very crudely, mind over matter. Healing is not mind over matter. Healing is the transmission of information needed by the healee. And the healing does not correspond to the way you want it to. So you go for a PK effect. You know, you take a random number generator and you're trying to make it come up ones as opposed to zeros, and you get a statistical effect. Okay, fine. PK, mind over matter. Your intention is producing an effect. Healing never goes the way the healer expects it to go. That would be a PK effect. Healing goes the way the healee needs to go. So when you see ulcerations and such in cancerous mice, that's a process of healing. No mouse that we've studied which has gotten a tumor and gotten an ulceration, there hasn't been a mouse that has not gone to full cure. It doesn't go the way we want it to, doesn't go at the speed we want. None of that occurs. It simply goes as a natural process. But the healer, I'm reasonably confident, the healer is not the driver of this. It's not a PK effect. So we can do this with human leukemia cells, and we can, I mentioned this before, this is a cartoon. You know, we have a treated ulcerated mouse, and that was a ripped off image. It's not a mouse, it's a rat. You know, but we'll pretend it's a mouse. And so we pretend on the left it's a mouse that has been treated by healing and gotten an ulceration and had been cured. And the mouse rat on the right side is untreated with a tumor. And what we do is, once the one on the left has been cured, we take some blood and we transfer the blood to the other mouse, and everybody's cured. And so again, a mouse that's been cured has within it the biological memory and transferable biological memory to give it to another mouse. If we could mass produce this, we'd have a mass producible vaccine. I don't know, again, if we'd be allowed, certainly not in the States. The FDA is not the most amenable group that's ever been. So this is organic stuff, meaning, and I mean organic stuff in the classical way of organic. I don't mean no pesticides or something like that. I mean carbon-based and all that. If we go to inorganic, and again, I'm not talking about whether it's pure or has been filtered or something like that. I'm talking about it doesn't have a carbon or atom. That's all I'm saying. And so we got water, and so water, exhibit A, water, is inorganic. And what happens if we use water instead of cotton, and we treat the water. Again, we're going to storability. So this was done at University of Connecticut Med School, a couple of experiments. We took some treated water bottles that go into the cage, did our little healing shtick to it, and then the water was fed to mice that we never met. And the mice get cured. So we can say, certainly there's multiple ways to store, to make a battery, if you will, to store and make a battery. A bottle of water can be the healing battery. A piece of cotton can be the healing battery. The cell medium can be a healing battery. There's a bunch of stuff that can be a healing battery. Can we scale it? And so now we switch questions to not just recording, but scaling. Now, what's the most scalable? So I'm looking always, because I'm lazy, let's look for the easy. If something works, what would be something would become instantly scalable? And the most instantly and universally scalable thing I could think of was a recording. So what happens if you record? And you'd ask, record what? But if we could capture healing in a recording, and it exists as a file, you can see the scalability here. We can upload this into the cloud and it becomes globally scalable. So if we could get a recording of healing and make it global, you can't get more scalable than that. So I started out figuring, well, let's see if I can get lucky. Let's try it and we'll see what happens if we make a recording. So I put together a team. Probably everybody knows the second guy from the left. So if you're in parapsychology, you got to know Dean Radin. Yeah, so Dean and I work on this and we work on that and all of that kind of stuff. So this was my team, my recording partners. I call them my partners in crime. I don't know that we committed a lot of crimes. I got a biologist, John McMichael. I got Dean Radin, who likes to take people's temperature. We don't know why. We got Mike Turner, who has a PhD in signal analysis. And since we're doing a recording, I need someone who's off the top, over the top, and he's the only person I know with a PhD in signal analysis. He's a member of the SSE. We got a bunch of geeks and nerds there, and I can call on a bunch of weird folk there. And on the right is Sarah Besum, who is our bench biologist, who orchestrated the day-to-day stuff in the lab. So if we can record, it becomes scalable. The question is, can we record? This is my team for recording. And we kind of went a little bit over the top to make this reasonably elaborate. This is a big wonkin Faraday cage. It's about 12 feet by 12 feet. And since we're doing electromagnetic signals, we need an electromagnetic free zone to do experiments in, so we don't have outside interference and electromagnetic pollution. Like all of us right now are living in an electromagnetic soup. It's very unnatural. We're getting used to it. I don't know what all the biological consequences will be, but if you want to do some clean experiments, you need to be not in the soup. So this is a Faraday cage which filters out the stuff. And so it's a big wonkin thing. And on the inside of this, there's a bunch of stuff and a bunch of recorders. And so we've got various types of detectors. We even have scalar field detectors. And so since we don't know what we're doing, we came in and we put 38 different kinds of detectors inside the Faraday cage. And they were of various stripes and various combinations and all of that. And what we did is, inside this Faraday cage, see if I can get back. Inside this Faraday cage, 3 people, I was one of them, 3 people took a piece of cotton. We had 3 people standing inside this, running all 38 detectors. We had each of us was holding a piece of cotton, and we were doing my healing technique. And so we just did our healing technique and ran the detectors, and we were treating a piece of cotton to stimulate the healing effect. And so we had a bunch of different things because we don't know what we're doing. And then we reduced this to a WAV file. I mean, I'm giving you the short version. We actually had to build a supercomputer water process to handle this kind of a data file. But it was reducible to a single wave file that can be played as an ordinary audio sound. So here's a setup in Providence. And the general idea is this. We have an incubator. We have cancer cells. We have just ordinary audio speakers from Amazon. They cost $49. The reason I'm laughing is that in order to build the recorder and to do the recording, probably was north of $300,000 just to make the recording. The speakers cost $49. And the reason we bought them was because they fit in the incubator, nothing more exotic than that. And we also up here have an amplifier, also from Amazon, also $49. Now the amplifier isn't designed to play anything exotic, and we're playing something exotic. The speakers aren't designed to reproduce anything that is exotic, and we're playing with exotic sounds. And the cancer cells are just hanging out in the bottom. They had no instructions. So the general idea is inside this incubator, kept to a certain temperature, we got cancer cells, and on an automatic timer, a recording is turned on, goes through an amplifier, 2 speakers into the cancer cells. And then the question is, what happens to the cancer? Is there any evidence for an effect? Remembering that if there is an effect, it's instantly scalable because it's a recording. So we ran genomics at various doses, 4 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, and et cetera, et cetera. And we ran genomic tests on 167 genes. And what we found, and we did it 7 times, and what we found is 68 of those 167 genes had a significant, predictable genomic change. Something was going on, recognizable by the cancer cells. And if we start to look at this and look at the 68 genes that changed, among the things that happened was apoptosis was upregulated. Apoptosis is programmed cell death. Your cells in your body kill themselves at certain intervals. And this is called apoptosis. Cancer, incidentally, does not kill itself. So cancer has been described as a more perfect version of ourselves. It doesn't commit suicide. It's immortal. You know, it just, I mean, unless it kills a host, but it just keeps going on and on and on and on. When we submit cancer cells to this recording, they start to kill themselves. We're not killing any cancer cells. They're taking themselves out. So we found changes in apoptosis. We found changes in a variety of markers that have to do with the immune system, with telomere length, with a variety of things, and a reproducible effect with 7 replications at Brown University. This was a reasonable breakthrough in that we published this in a conventional biology journal. And the biologists, you know, who are not the most interested in the paranormal that I've ever met as a discipline, the biologists, I mean, how do you turn it down? What did we do wrong? And so they published it. And we have some pretty interesting conclusions that came out of this. The first one, which it matters a whole lot here, is reproducible changes have been induced by the healing intention, whether by direct healing or the recording. So 68 out of 167 cancer genes are affected by the recording, a reproducible phenomenon in a recording which is infinitely scalable. We showed that healing intention can be captured and released, think battery, thereby allowing the phenomenon to be more widely disseminated, think uploaded into the web. Now, can you see? Let's say we perfect this. Can you see, you know, a skeptic going, I don't believe this, you know, harumph, harumph, you know, kind of thing. Don't listen to it. You know, be sick, have a bull. I'm not trying to save the world. I just find it an interesting problem. But we've demonstrated healing can be captured, released. We found something reasonably interesting, and that is hands-on delivery of the healing. So if we stood there and put hands around cancer cells and then played similar cancer cells, the recording, live healing is stronger. And what that means is we didn't fully capture, we're just beginning at this, but we didn't fully capture it. So it seems to have taken about 4 hours with the recording to do what a healer could do in an hour. It's doing the stuff, but it's taking a longer period of time. And so something is missing in the recording that we have. We don't know whether it's we used the wrong detector. We don't know whether it was because it was digital and digitization loses information in the sampling technique. We don't know, we don't know, we don't know, we don't know. But right now, it's possible to make a technology of healing, but it still needs work. I wouldn't call it an alternative to hands-on healing, but we're getting there. And the last conclusion that we got from this paper, we actually didn't put into the paper because it's a little too crazy. So if you'll just give me some space here, because this is crazy, the last one, it's not in the paper. And that is, we're producing a conditioned space. And what happened was very simple. One of the guys that was here, that was in the cage who made the original healing recording with us, is a sensitive. He's, you might call him a psychic, a sensitive, or something. He's really good. I mean, he's really good. This guy is pathologically sensitive. You know, I don't know how he goes through the day, but he's pathologically sensitive. And he was actually here in our house. And I was playing the recording to him in various things, and I'm checking the orientation of the speakers and volume and all this kind of stuff. And we're playing along, and I turn it off after a while. And I say, okay, thanks, we'll try again later. And he just looks at me and he says, the recording's not off. And I said, it's off, you know, I mean, it's off. He goes, no, it's not. And I said, it's off. You know, then I reached over, I picked up the plug, you know, I said, it's not even plugged in. You know, you're a dope. It's off. And he goes, it's not off. He wouldn't back down. So I said, I got to test this. Guy has too good a track record. So I called up to the lab in Providence and I said, get some cancer cells. Before you put them in the incubator, play the recording, turn off the recording, leave the recording off for a few days, and then stick in the cancer cells. So we played, Sarah played the recording to an empty incubator, turned it off, waited 3 days, and stuck some cancer cells in. And darn it, they genomically changed the same way. And so the space itself has been altered. Now that is methodologically confounding if you're doing experiments, because the space, it turns out, reacts differently depending on what's happened before. We got a problem. On the other hand, think of the possibilities for therapy. What if we condition the space of a healing environment? So what if we go into a medical practice, play the recording, condition the space? Would we change the outcome of the healing? This is in the drawing boards. So we found in 7 replications with the recording on cancer cells, we obviously have something, and now we have to try doing it with mice. And so the setup is basically the same. This is the same amplifier you saw in the incubator. This is the same speakers, but now we have cages of mice, and this whole thing is automated. So we've got cages of mice being played a recording through an amplifier, and then we watch to see what happens. And what happened, we started to get ulcerations like we did using the hands-on approach. And then I got suddenly shut down. And that was by the animal ethics people. When the animal ethics people saw these ulcerations, even though I had shown them many ulcerations before, they freaked out and they whacked the mice. And then they weren't suffering, but they came in and they killed the mice in the name of being humane. That wasn't good. I lost $140,000 on that. But nonetheless, we ended up having a pretty interesting, some pretty interesting results, even though it was an aborted experiment. And it was wrongly aborted because the mice showed no signs of stress or illness, just like we had found in previous studies. But this turned into another pretty good paper in a conventional biology journal. And we found that with mice being played the recording, same thing, we get a whole bunch of results. The recording produces biological effects in the mice. It changes some of the stuff in their blood. It changes inflammation markers. It changes white blood cells. And look at the last one. Some of these things are not subtle. Spleen weight, which is an indirect marker of immunology, spleen weight increased 5 times. Something is going on and something serious has been stimulated by this recording. But since we were aborted, we had to go a little bit farther. I just got back from doing some experiments in Tokyo. And here we did breast cancer cells, bladder cancer cells, melanoma cancer cells, and with the mice exposed to the recording. And once again, we're finding stuff. Significant effects are seen in the breast cancer model. Tumor volume is different. The mass of the tumor is different. The blood is different. Interestingly, we did not see a change in the melanoma. We don't know why. And we think there may have been a procedural problem with the bladder cancers. They didn't develop tumors. Nonetheless, this became an interesting paper. So the short version now, if we've got a recording, the recording is going to do stuff to mice, the recording is going to do stuff to cells. We haven't done a human study on the recording. It would be an interesting one to do. Now we're going to switch over to water. So I already showed you water that we've treated and fed to cancerous mice and they get cured. But now the question is, can we store it, scale it? The recording is storable and scalable. Can you make water storable and scalable? That's the question. So we're dealing with water, and the question is there any way to enhance it, and is there any way that we can mass produce it? And we got into the enhancing. It was interesting. Indirectly, we were exposed to some homeopaths. And I'm not a I don't know how to spell homeopathy. So I'm not a homeopath. And they suggested dilution and succussion. And I said, with dilution and succussion, we're starting with water. How do you dilute water? And they said, try it. And so we tried succussing, and we tried taking water and pounding it, and we tried taking water and pounding it and then diluting it with more water, and we, feeling like an idiot. But the craziest thing happened. It seemed to make the healing faster. And I was like, what in heaven's name is this? And so once again, I went to a pathological sensitive, and I said, how many times should we dilute? How many times should we succuss? How many times? And they did their sensitivity hocus pocus stuff and came out and gave us some numbers, and we tried the numbers, and darn it, they seem to have been right. Should pay attention to these pathological sensitives. So, storing healing by taking treated water that we've done normal healing, so to speak, and we've made stronger by dilution and succussion. Now the question is, can we scale it? So we settled on a promising combination of dilution and succussion with some trial and error. and some help from the sensitives, and it seemed to work. And then we tried to figure out, water sitting by itself can store, but can we make water charge water? Then it would be scalable. So we developed a gizmo, I'm calling it a gizmo, with some folks in the Netherlands to try to make something that can reproduce what you've made. Not only reproduce what you made, but make it a scalable, available therapy. So we built a gizmo, and most of this is hidden, but the general idea here is that you got an incoming water bottom, and you got outgoing water at the top, and in here we got a bunch of gizmos and thingies that are going on. That is, we're alleging you can take this enhanced water, stick it in the gizmo, and out comes more enhanced water that becomes scalable. And we turned this actually into a product that we're trying to develop right now, and it's called Restore. This is commercially available if you want it. So we had to test it. What happens to this, what we're calling Restore? What happens to this water that's been diluted and succussed and stuck through a gizmo? What happens if we take this out into the real world? We've already done a bunch of cell cultures. We've done some mice. Let's try some people. So we did 3 clinical studies of about 100 volunteers each, 2 in the States, 1 in Europe. So 3 clinical studies of about 100 volunteers each, taking 2 drops under the tongue 4 times a day for 8 weeks. All of these people had some problem. Something was wrong. They needed health. They weren't healthy enough by their own admission. So all I did, stick this stuff under the tongue, 2 drops 4 times a day, and we follow it, and we get feedback, self-report feedback every 2 weeks for 8 weeks. And some of these data are crazy. 98% reported improvement in their health. 98%. Almost no one who got the drops didn't want more. They say, I'm better when I take these drops. What does that mean? I don't know. And some people have said, my depression's lifted, my tumors fell off, whatever, but everybody virtually says, I'm better with these drops. So we measured various metrics of health, as well as asked them for self-report of their physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. And we had, this in a paper, statistically significant changes in their physical health, in their mental health, and their spiritual well-being. It kicked in, generally speaking, just before 2 weeks, started to really ramp up between 2 weeks and 4 weeks, and then they just gradually, eventually, just kept getting better over the course of the next 8 weeks. And when they stopped taking the water when the thing was over, they continued to get better. And we had a wide variety of conditions, including, but not limited to, cancer, arthritis, depression, anxiety, pain, Parkinson's. And some of the effects of this water appear to be stronger than the hands-on treatment, which is seriously interesting. When we did the studying of the recording and compared it to cancer cells by a healer versus the recording, the healer was stronger. This water seems to be stronger than a healer. And if the gizmo can mass produce it, it becomes scalable. It's not instantly globally scalable like the recording would be, but it's scalable. We can produce essentially unlimited amounts of this stuff. Not literally, but pretty close. So, possibilities. What happens, we go back to the recording, if we condition the space of a treatment room? What happens if we supply clients with treated water? Can the recording and/or the drops enhance clinical outcomes? I've got a study going on right now. It's about a week old. I'm blind to it. I design the studies and then I don't go near them. I'm considered a contaminant. But we have a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized trial on COVID. Because we've done a few hundred COVID people very quickly, it's not a particularly hard problem to solve. And so now we're doing a seriously controlled medical study to see if we have the COVID answer. I suspect we do, but it's too early to tell. I should know in about a month. And that would be fun. So we would have, and it's a water-based therapy. So the only thing the COVID people are taking is water, but it's water that's been informed with healing intention. And we've done this to a whole bunch of people with a whole bunch of good results. And now we're taking it to formal trial. But wouldn't it be fun to get rid of COVID? And we'd get rid of COVID with water. And I wouldn't have any idea how it worked. But if you had COVID and you wanted it, put these drops under your tongue. That's about all we have now. Put the drops under your tongue, see what happens. What happens is you wake up the next day and you go, the test must have been wrong, I'm fine. That's interesting. So, can the recording and or the drops enhance clinical outcomes? Working towards this and working towards trying this in actual clinical settings. So we've got water-based therapies we're playing with for people. We've got them for animals. We've got it for plants. We're doing a bunch of studies on plants. I don't think there's any question now that, yes, it's storable in water and you can make it stronger than it originally was. It's reasonably interesting. Third bullet down, I'm interested in whether or not directed therapies are different than generically treated water. In other words, if I treat water with a specific intention of using it for pain, does it become better for pain than if I just treat water and let nature take its course? We don't know the answer to that. So what are the possibilities? There's a whole bunch, because we have storability, we have scalability. So I need to thank some of the folks who have gone a long way and out of their way to try to help me along. So I have to do this anyway. And the next thing is a joke, so don't take it too seriously. It's also probably a copyright violation. Someone made this for me. When Bengston comes in, everybody play dead. Anyway, thank you.
Wow, thank you, Bill. That's really fascinating. We have a few questions. Are you okay for questions?
Yeah, sure. Let me, if I'm assuming I don't need this, so I'm going to stop sharing and we can look at each other.
Yes, you don't need that.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I showed you cotton, I showed you cell medium, I showed you mouse, I showed, you know, who knows, you know, how far this can go and what, you know, other, so if you think of this as the nascent stages when batteries were first developed, that's about where we are now. And what I'm trying to do is create a technology of healing, which means we can externalize it. Everybody can work on the problem. We can make it better. You know, I mean, it's nothing more exotic than that. And so this is my first attempt. So we've got our first battery, our first car, our first, you know, but what we have is a proof of concept that it's possible. You know, next thing you know, someone will come along and say you can get in a long tube and fly, you know, but I don't believe that. But you get the idea. The Wright brothers are slightly different than Delta, but you had to start with the Wright brothers. I think that's about where we are. You know, so proof of concept, it is possible to fly. It is possible to have a healing technology, but it's also, by extension, possible to make it a whole lot better than we have now. The recording, what we're trying to do is see whether if we record, actually run a recording of healing intention, whether we would capture something. And what we did is, because we don't know even remotely how to begin such a question, is Dean and I got 38 different kinds of detectors that we simultaneously ran inside of a Faraday cage while 3 people practiced healing intention on the inside. So we don't know what would happen if we switched out, you know, because some of the detectors probably are useless and some may have been useful, but we're not sure. One whole phase of research will be, are there better ways to do a recording? And I'm looking into that, you know, right now.
And by recording, you mean magnetometer recordings? Is that what you mean?
We had only one. We had 38 different kinds of detectors, even including scalar fields. Just before I was asked about earthing, Jim Oshman is the guy who turned me on to earthing a couple of years ago, and I called Jim and I said, here's what we're working on, what should we do? And he did his Oshman shtick. And then he said, scalar fields, you need to include scalar fields. So that's how a recording or a detector was put in there. And then we had a magnetometer put in there. And then we had enormous possibility of taking anywhere you want along the electromagnetic spectrum, including scalar fields. And we threw the whole thing together through a supercomputer, reduced it to a WAV file.
Interesting. Lots of power, lots of machine power behind you. Interesting.
Big time, big time. Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. Vlad?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. It's actually mind-blowing, in all honesty, just all this information.
I threw a lot at you.
Yeah, look, I actually have lots of questions, but I was hoping you might be able to answer two of them for me. One is, you mentioned that the non-believers were, I think you were implying, they're actually better at healing than believers.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you explain what was it? Do you know what the difference is, or why that such a difference exists?
Well, the why would be speculative. That they are. I mean, first of all, I have a bias. I'm a card-carrying skeptic, but in a classical sense, a skeptic to me is someone who says, "I don't understand. Let's see and be open." So a skeptic is maximum openness. A believer is shut, and so a believer knows the answer. And so believers themselves come in various flavors. I don't know if it's flavors, but you got everybody, they got people who believe everything is true, and you got people who believe everything is false. They're both believers. I'm not a believer, I'm following the evidence. I don't know enough to say yes or no, and I find believers to be, regardless of which way they believe, I find them to be arrogant. And so I just simply have a personal preference not to be hanging around believers. So when I would go around looking for volunteers for my studies, I generally go not to believers, and a believer could say, "I believe you're wrong." That's a believer. "I believe you're right." If anybody says to me, "Wow, your stuff's amazing," I believe it. I go, "Ooh, you scared me," because I don't believe it. You know, I just can't make the healing stop. And so I suspect that a skeptic, and there aren't that many skeptics I've run into, a skeptic has a much greater chance of being open and allowing healing to occur. A believer, particularly a believer who's done something once, I suspect that the reinforcement of the attempt to reinforce belief is part of what happens in parapsychology with the decline effect. And you get people who come into a new task and they're playful and they're jumping up and down and they're excited and they get tremendous results, and then they go, "I got results," you know, and it's almost like it's a trauma. And then now, could I do it again? You know, now you start getting serious. Now you get, so I think the things that will kill anything is a believer, and I suspect a ritual will kill anything also.
So what differences did you find between a non-believer versus like a psychic healer?
I didn't do systematic studies. I simply have anecdote. So I can't really. I'm saying I picked this. I've spoken, for example, in skeptic societies. You know, they invite me, and it's really fun to go to a skeptic society because there's no skeptics in the room. You know, they're all mindless believers. You know, and so you go into it and they're like this. You know, and their legs are crossed, their arms are crossed. You know, their ears are crossed, everything's crossed, and then, you know, And I usually start by insulting them, which is my superpower. But the way I insult people is I say, I'm the only skeptic in the room. And then they get really harumph, you know, and I say, you already know everything I'm about to say is wrong. And you don't even know what I'm going to say. And then there's some of you who think everything I'm about to say is right, and you don't know what I have to say. You're all mindless.
Mm.
Listen, and then see if you can come up with a good counter hypothesis. A skeptic, I've taken my data to departments of oncology in medical schools. You want to see a hostile group? I've spoken to like 75 oncologists, you know, who have no experience in this, and they go after me, try to cut my knees out. I think it's fun. And at the end they go, we give up, you know, and you want to try, you want to be a healer. Well, I don't know how to, I said, I don't either. I'm not a healer. I can just heal. How hard is healing? Stop making it so special. Relax. Have some fun.
Yeah.
The decline effect is the loss of playfulness and the institution of ritual. If I try to do the same thing again and I do it just right, then I'll reproduce the effect. Oh, please, you're going to kill it. And believers have a tendency to, regardless of which flavor they come in, I believe it's true, I believe it's false, they have a tendency to try to defend their beliefs. And I just start with the assumption that I'm wrong about everything so I can relax. I also start with the assumption you're wrong about everything. It's nothing personal, because I've still never found anybody who knows what they're talking about, including me. I would never listen to me.
Yeah. The other question I had for you was the water dilution technique. So you do the healing aspect of water, and then you mentioned the dilution technique.
Yeah.
Why do we need to dilute the water? Why not just use the water as it is?
Because that doesn't make it scalable. And this goes to the storability and the scalability. The storability, you know, water, we treated the water, we fed it, you know, we've given it for leukemia. You know, you drink it down and gets rid of leukemia, gets rid of, you know, and all that. But that doesn't mean it's scalable, because there's a boatload of people who need the water. And if we go back to my initial slides, if you got a healer and a healee, it's exhausting.
Can I just jump in, Bill, on the water? Have you ever noticed or drawn a parallel between holy water?
No, I don't know anything about holy water.
A pope or a priest will say a prayer over water and make it holy water. Do you think the same intention effects are in there?
No, I think different techniques produce different results, and I don't have data to back that up. So I holy or not, whether you call it holy or profane, you can make water heal, but my impression now is different healing techniques produce different results on different phenomena. And I don't think healing should be thrown into a monolithic box and as if all healing is the same. So for example, the stuff that I do, and again, it's not a secret, you can go pick up my stuff and do it yourself. It's teach yourself or join a group or do something like that. You know, it's fine. Do your own experiments. But my experience is that different techniques produce different results. Our stuff is particularly good on cancer, it's easy to research. It's really good on stuff like Alzheimer's. It's really good on stuff like bipolar and depression. And it stinks on some other stuff. So I don't know, in my system, for example, a single case of a type 1 diabetes fixed. Don't know. I have improvement of symptoms, but I haven't, not fixed. So reduction in insulin need, damaged vision partially restored, but not fixed. And we seem to be, as a generic tendency, better at taking things away than producing things that are missing. So in diabetes, you're missing something. So we do our hocus pocus and all that stuff, and symptomatically, a little better for a short period of time, but I'm completely unimpressed. Parkinson's, you got something's missing. So we treat Parkinson's, and you know it goes down, but it comes back. We've never had a Parkinson's cure. Now with the water, and this is, I'm just reporting, these are anecdotes. There's an astrophysicist that we know who had been in a wheelchair for 5 years. Sublingual drops, the Restore, the stuff that you know that I talked about, the Restore, got rid of the wheelchairs, walking a mile at a time. Now, hands-on healing, I've never seen that dramatic a result in Parkinson's. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be done, but what I'm suggesting is all healing isn't necessarily alike. So the Bengston method works on X but not Y. The other method may work on Y but not X. And to call it healing, I think, is to do it disservice. And what I think a huge area of inquiry that would be fruitful is comparative healing techniques. So the people who I can report only anecdotally, because I don't know, I can barely spell healing. The people who know, and they come in there, you know, they've trained in this, that, and the other, and then they say, yours is different for this, but I like the other for that. Okay, you know, what do I know? I don't know anything about healing.
Thanks, Bill. Russ, you've got a question?
Yeah, just two really quick questions, actually. Regarding the water discussion we were just having, is it not possible to make it scalable? Could the person not just, the healer, not just affect like a whole bunch of water, like a whole lake of water or something like that?
Yeah, yeah.
And the other one, just before you jump into that, is I'd love to look at more of your work. Where can we find your papers and everything like that?
My website is bengstonresearch.com.
Right.
And there's I've never seen it. My wife does it. But I've never seen me give a talk. I have no idea. I'm not going to watch this. I've never seen one before. And I think there's about 30 or 35. I actually don't know. But I have more than that. If you just want to write me and info@bengstonresearch.com, I'd be happy to give you. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about copyright.
Okay. Excellent. All right.
And you're happy. I'm happy to geek away, you know, all you want, and you know, so you let me know how geeky you want it to be and what the subject is, and we'd be happy to supply you with stuff. And just go graze, you know, in bengstonresearch.com. And I don't think it's up to date, so we could up to date you too. The publications are still cranking.
All right, and about the making the water scalable, could somebody make influence like a whole lot of water, like a big lake?
Oh yeah, that's an interesting question. There's got to be, you know, famous last words. There's got to be a limit to it someplace. You know, so if I put a drop in the ocean, you know, I don't think all the fish, you know, send me a thank you note. You know, so something's got to attenuate someplace. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but something seems like it ought to. I know the reverse is there's a physician friend we have who is like, once he started doing this and healing the sick and raising the dead, and you know, he's like a kid in a candy store. Oh boy, I get to do this, you know, like that. So he started to treat water. He started to play with sunlight and see, and he was, you know, playful kind of a guy. And he lives in a semi-rural area where there's a lot of polluted wells. And what he's taken to do is take, he goes, I'm not giving them a lot. I'm going to take a little bit of water, treat it, or get it out of the gizmo, or whatever you want to do it. And he drops it in the wells, and he says, and they clean up. And I go, come on. What do you mean they clean up? And he goes, they clean up. There's no more smell. There's no more this. The water's pure. I said, no, I don't believe this crap. You know, come on. I don't know, what's the limit? So, you know, you got a well with X amount of water, but what if you go to a lake? And what if you go to a big lake? And what if you go to,
But what I was getting at really is because normally I guess when you treat water, you've got like a little bottle of water and you hold your hands around it or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But would somebody be able to just go straight to the lake and just go, rather than, because we talked about diluting
Oh,
it.
treat the lake.
Yeah, treat the whole lake.
Yeah, you probably would. I would consider it to be unethical, but you probably could get some effect. It'd be worth doing. I'd be too scared to do it, but I'd hope someone else would do it. Yeah, I see. I have a very, very, very strong prohibition against healing someone that doesn't know that they're being healed, and or they also have the right to say no. Because it turns out,
I guess
I mean, when I started this 105 years ago, I started with people, and I got annoyed with them pretty quick. But one of the most common responses to being healed in people, I call them uprights. I prefer mice. But one of the responses to uprights, of uprights, is anger. So when you get, particularly if you've got a serious chronic disease, anger follows usually the treatment. Because you've screwed up a person's life. You know, they are the disease. They're the poor. You know, and then the loser comes along, goes hocus pocus, and takes away their identity.
I guess in a more industrial sense, if you went to the water bottling factory, and you know, there was a tank of 250,000 gallons of water, could somebody treat that whole tank? All in one go?
But even then, all you got is the 250 gallons. So, and you know, we have those experiments on, you know, plants, mice, and cells, and all that stuff. But if we can turn the water into a water producing, so it's that's what I'm talking about, is scalable. So imagine if we could perfect. See, the recording right now, I wouldn't take as an alternative treatment to a healing. I might be a complementary treatment, you know, so but then complementary to what? I just started a couple of days ago a study with a homeopath in Canada, and we're looking at interactive effects of homeopathy in this stuff, and to see whether if we treat, you know, this way or that way and combine this and that. There's virtually nothing done on combinatorics. It's not known. It's not known in conventional medicine. It's not known in unconventional medicine. So you go to a lung guy and they give you a prescription for lungs, and you go to a heart guy, they give you a prescription, and you go to and you say, how do they interact with one another? And the only answer is, I don't know. You know, it's too complex to model. Well, there ought to be interactive effects of healing, and there also ought to be negative effects. You know, this isn't magic stuff. It's not pure, it's not spiritual, it's a real phenomenon. You know, gravity has consequences, so does healing. Sometimes gravity doesn't work to your favor. Sometimes it does. Sometimes healing doesn't work to your favor. Sometimes it does. And the question is, what are the combinations? So if you're on statins, you don't want to take grapefruit. Okay, well, if you're on healing, do I want to? You know, it's the same kind of question. But for reasons that are just absolutely astonishing to me, healing is special. Why? Gravity's special. Electricity is special. Healing is special, but not more than the others.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone got any other questions? Do you want to raise your hand? Bill, sorry, I missed some of your talk. Are you thinking about doing any research on having human participants?
Yeah, I've already done it on 300 humans, and that's with the scaled water. And right now I'm doing on 300 more people a COVID study. And we're going to try on humans interactive effects with homeopathic remedies.
Okay.
That should be
Really
sufficiently scary to me that I'll want to run back and play with the mice.
Oh. Yeah, no, I'll be very keen to hear the results of that.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what's going to happen, because I don't know anything about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I have no way to weigh in on that. No idea. Yeah, no idea.
Thank you.
And if so, if it had those, I would ask the same kind of questions, whether it comes from Lords or it comes from, I don't care. What does it work on and what doesn't it work on, to get an idea about what's going on? So when I say, for example, we're lousy with type 1 diabetes, it doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means it hasn't been done so far. An interesting phenomenon in a kind of a sheldrake morphogenetic way is when someone tells me I'm full of it, which is most of the time, but when someone tells me I'm full of it, I can do diabetes, and then they do it, it turns out, it seems to be as if then other people can then do it. And that's seriously interesting. So when I'm saying we haven't had an effect on type 1 diabetes, it doesn't mean we won't. It just means to date, let's put that in the pile so we understand what we're working on and what's not. We haven't had a cure of Parkinson's with just hands-on. We've had better results with the water, and that just makes my head explode. And then the question would be, can we enhance it again? Can we, so I'm thinking in terms of technological questions. Can we make it better? So we're really good at taking things away. So if you have a tumor, we're really good. If you have a benign growth, we're not good at all. So if you're talking about seriously aggressive cancer versus a wart, it's not even close. To me, the wart is the big W. Nothing.
Can I come in with a question? My name's John Webber. I'm a psychiatrist in Melbourne who's very interested in all of these issues, psychic phenomenon. Do you now, allowing for the fact that you don't have any beliefs, do you have an underlying idea of how these things work?
No.
I mean, if I was asked, what's my core idea, it would probably be that consciousness precedes matter. And I like that idea. Do you have a sense of what?
Oh, I think you can't defend that matter comes before consciousness. I can't defend that. Consciousness being fundamental, I think, is kind of fundamental. But
so
that doesn't.
That?
Yeah, I accept that as a working hypothesis, but I don't believe it, because as soon as I believe something, I'm sure I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But I went 20 years, this is literally true, without getting a single hypothesis right in the lab. Until finally one day I woke up in a manic state and ran around the house. And what's the matter? What's the matter? I said, I think I figured it out. And it had to do with resonant bonding. And I think I can explain how placebos work, for example. I don't think they're psychological. I think they're physical resonant bonding of spatially separate groups. And if you allow for non-locality, the question becomes, there's some dirty little secrets in placebos. I don't know many people who know this stuff at all. The placebo effect is directly proportional to the strength of a drug used. If I go to 2x drug, I get 2x placebo. Now, how do you explain that psychologically? The larger the group, the faster collective cure. The larger the group, the stronger the placebo effect. So if you're taking, whether it's a psychiatric drug or other kind of non-psychiatric drug, and you're taking it through, I'm going in the States now, through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and all that kind of stuff. Phase 1, you got this dinky little study, you get a dinky little placebo effect. You up the numbers, you up the placebo effect. Until finally you get to stage 3, and you almost never get, the placebo effect negates the drug effect, because it becomes that closely to mimic the results.
Yeah.
Now, what's happening? It can't be, and I could list you other data. it can't be psychological. This is a physical resonant bonding. And if we start thinking in terms of connection, not entanglement, that's a one-way process, but rather resonance and the sense of connection. So everybody here has had a sense of connection and a sense of disconnection. You felt close, you felt far. On Monday, you love your dog. On Tuesday, you hate your dog. It's not the dog. It's the connection. I measure this. So I have papers. I don't know, everybody switch spots. But I have some papers with EEGs and I have some papers with functional MRIs. Look, and we sample 38 leads every 500th of a second, you know, again, monster databases. And I show brains going to phase locking at a distance. Now, if that's the case, that's healing. Now, if it's which came first, the chicken or the egg, that one I actually solved. That took me 3.5 years. It's the chicken. But I give you the details down the road, but it's the chicken. Whether the resonance comes first, healing is connection. Healing is love. So now why do you hate cancer? I thought you were a healer. Love it. Cancer are cells that are deaf. They don't know where they are. So you're a psychiatrist, you've studied a little biology. If I scrape some cells off my hand, what happens? Well, my body starts to make new cells and it stops when it gets it fixes the hole. How does that work? You have no idea.
Exactly.
You know the steps that it'll take, but you have no idea who's in charge. None whatsoever. You say that to a biologist, they'll leave the room screaming.
Yeah.
But we do the mechanism. We know the mechanism. Who gives a damn about the mechanism? Give me a break. What's controlling this mechanism? And they said the answer is I don't want to deal with that. I too much.
No, that's lovely. Thank you. No, it does, because it does bring back that whole concept of what is the original, what is the process, and what's the I love that your working theory is the idea that consciousness precedes matter. You know, that that's kind of primary rather than secondary.
And we're talking about connection at a distance. Now, if it's connection at a distance and you're in Australia and I'm in New York, it ain't energy. You know?
No, indeed.
So it's not energy, it's an informational coupling. That doesn't answer the question. That makes you feel safe. So if I say it's informational coupling and you go, oh, wow, you've explained it. I haven't done nothing.
Thank you.
Again, I've never found anyone I can't pull their legs out from in 30 seconds, including me. When I talk, I am haunted by the little birdie on my shoulder that says, you're full of it. And here's why. And so since I and everybody else I've ever met, maybe there's somebody here who knows something, but I don't. I and everybody else I've ever met, we don't know the mechanism.
Exactly.
Even if we talk about entanglement or resonance, come on.
Oh,
it's
no,
cute,
no, it's
all that, but it's making you feel safe. That's all it's doing.
Well, no, it does, and at least it gives you a sense that there's just way more to it. But even they still won't talk about quantum theory and time not being linear when they're teaching physics at school. It's remarkable because it's a bit too scary. And yes, we can't define it completely. But so thank you very much. Really appreciate your thoughts. Lovely.
Thank you.
Interesting that Dean Radin, when I was asking Dean Radin about chakras, he described on a web forum that he didn't know of anything solid about chakras. And is there any kind of analog in the body? And you're a healer, Bill. So I'm wondering, did you ever employ your healing through your hand to locate or specialize in the chakras when you did your healing?
No, I have to say I'm not a healer. I can just produce healing, you know. But I'm not a healer. It's not my forte. It's not none of those things. It's just I'm just producing healing. I can get at least non-believers to produce healing. You know, I think so far without exception. An interesting question is, could a believer heal? You know, I've never actually tested believers. They're too scary to me.
So,
But in terms of chakras, no, I don't. With help, I could probably spell chakra, but I don't know the stuff. You know, I can't be plus or minus. I've done with a guy with a GDV camera just to play around, gas discharge visualization, which alleges to take pictures of chakras and the total amount of energy coming out and all this kind of stuff. And we've played with that. I don't know what it means. So you see the little light balls, you know, and open things and close things, but I don't know. I don't know what it all means. And they're talking about this. And one person got all excited and said, when you treat someone, their chakras shrink. And I said, okay, is that, you know, what's a chakra and is that good or bad? You know, I don't know. And they go, well, in everybody else we've tested, a healer, the chakras get bigger. And I went, okay, you know, I don't know what to do with that. So I have pathologically sensitive friends I know who can see chakras according to them. I don't know what to do with that. And you know, the only measurement I know of its so-called energetic strength is a GDV, and I have no idea the reliability of that.
Just a quick follow-up. You said in your book here, Energy Cure, that something came out of your palm at one point, or maybe it was your friend Mayrick. So is there something about the acupuncture points?
Yes. That I can answer yes. And the reason I can answer yes is because we do. We'll take a cage of mice, for example, and so you're sitting in a lab, and this is the task. So you put your hand straight in front of you like that, and then someone will take a cage and spin it. The mice don't like that, but whatever, regardless of the orientation where it stops, we do this, and the mice will always move to this spot on the hand, and only the left hand. And one of the interesting phenomena is everybody who studies my method becomes left-handed. I find that's interesting. But the mice recognize this too. So the mice go to the left hand. I have pictures, not with me, but I have pictures of a bunch of mice in a cage, and all of the mice have tumors of a reasonable size. And you put your hands down, and they'll actually, if you could see a movie, they'd take pictures of them taking turns to going to this spot. Once they're healed, they don't do it anymore. They recognize there's something over here that's good.
So
we can do the same thing, incidentally, in vitro with some cell cultures. So we take cell cultures, and we take ordinary, say, bacteria, and we look at the growth rate. We see what happens when you treat the bacteria, and nothing out of the ordinary goes. So you take different types of cells, and nothing out of the ordinary happens. But if you wound them, they respond, and if they have motility, they'll move to the left hand.
There is something in Qigong where they talk about the left hand. And so I'll ask my wife, who's a Qigong instructor, about that point. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
So I can't speak to chakras, but I can speak to, there's something about that spot that matters.
Yeah. I'll check that out. I'll email you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vlad.
All right.
Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yep. One very, I guess, quick question. If we all want to actually now test ourselves during the break, or we can, perhaps charge up our coffees and things. What methods would you recommend in terms of how long would you use to would you spend charging up a bottle of water, and what kind of thought would be involved for the healing?
Well, the only way I know to charge water is through my cycling technique. I don't know of other ways to do it. So again, I'm not a healer. I don't know anything about comparative healing. I would be a lousy clinician because I don't have a variety of tools to bring to a patient. I just develop my own, and then I test it into oblivion. So the answer to your question is, unless you know how to cycle, I don't know how to help you because I don't know enough about healing. But I don't feel a connection to water the same way I do cotton, for example. And so I'm more sensitive to changes in the cotton. And in the cotton, it depends on how much you treat. If you've got a little amount of cotton, you can probably get rid of it in 15 minutes. If you get up to like a pound roll, I don't like it at all. You know, I don't like it. And, you know, what we were talking before about what if you go down to a lake and put your hands, you know, I couldn't connect to that in any way. I mean, that doesn't mean someone shouldn't try it. It just that I couldn't connect to it. So it seems to be a function of the target. But we don't know enough about the different materials, how quickly they, and I don't even know if I'm using the right term, absorb, you know, whatever it is that we're doing. My suspicion would be different healing techniques would work differently. My suspicion would be individual idiosyncrasies would probably take the same healing tradition and come up with divergent results.
When you were treating the mice, you had a photograph of you with your hands over the mice. How long did, what thoughts were going through your head, and how long was that treatment going for?
Treatment depends on the protocol that we have. So if you're doing an experiment, I've done experiments treating mice an hour at a time, a half hour at a time, 45 minutes at a time, 15 minutes at a time, once a week, 3 times a week, 5 times a week, 7 times a week. I've done a lot of experiments.
Okay.
And so there is, I can say with reasonable assurance, though I'm probably wrong, with reasonable assurance that there is a minimum dose that's necessary. We tried, interestingly enough, and this was at Indiana Medical School, we had 6 mice rooms going and doing this test and that test, the other test. And we found if we had the volunteer healers do everything they do except do the cycling technique, which we haven't talked about and I can't do here, the cycling technique. So we did the experiment, you know, and I take in the same way that I deal with models that are already known, and I add 1 variable. Well, since we had a reliable effect of cancer cures in mice, we took out 1 variable. You could do the laying on of hands or laying around of hands, but you couldn't cycle. Mice died. Now that's reasonably interesting. I don't know what it means, and I don't know the connection between the cycling and the healing, but something goes on. And anecdotally, people who are healers, as distinct from me, people who are healers report when they cycle, something changes. What that thing is the thing I'm looking for.
Okay.
To capture it, store it, and scale it. So the restore water for the sublingual drops literally came from me holding something smaller than this. I was probably holding between 10 and 15 milliliters. So holding a small amount of water, walking around outside on my deck for, I don't remember anymore, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And then we took that water and succussed it and diluted it. Again, my head was exploding with the dilution of water with water. I didn't know, what do you do with that? So I'm diluting water with water, and then I'm doing it again, and then I'm doing it again, and I'm succussing, and then I'm doing, and then we're putting it through this gizmo, and out comes this stuff that replicates, actually seems to make the original stuff stronger. It's just, it's confusing out there.
Bill, can I interrupt? Can you explain what cycling is?
No, I've explained it, but when I give a workshop, it takes me about a day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this thing is really simple. It'll all fit on a single PowerPoint slide, but people screw it up in their heads. I don't know, you've probably run into uprights before. They're scary. Mm-hmm. So I put up a nice simple slide, and they screw it up into oblivion. So if you come to me to learn this, and I'm not ducking your question, I'm just saying I can't answer it now. You know, I'm already overtime, so I can't answer it now. But it's not a secret. So you can learn it by taking a workshop with me. I'm not trying to sell that. You can learn it by picking up the CDs, which is that'll teach you how to cycle. And people, I get emails from people all over the world going, I don't need you, you're a loser. You know, I just got your CDs, I did this, and now I'm healing the sick and raising the dead. I go, okay, I don't believe you, but okay.
Mm-hmm. How are you going for time, Bill? We've got another question, but I don't want to take up, I know it's getting late where you are.
Again, it's not trying to duck your question. I would say, do it, play with it, do your own tests and show me I'm wrong. I'm perfectly fine.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, do it, play with it.
Fine. I understand it's there's more,
I got a group in the States. I had no idea. There's a small group in an institution. I'm not going to say what it is. It's a parapsychological institution in the States. And this group of people got together and they taught themselves, you know, using the CDs, how to cycle and do that. They've been doing it for years now. And I went out and gave a talk about something or other to them. And one of the guys said, how many people in the audience have been fixed by Bengston's method? And like 100 hands went up. And I was like, what? Who did you? You know, what was it? What does that mean? You know, I don't know what's going on. People all over the place are doing this stuff. And hopefully they're not paying attention to me too. They're doing it for themselves and playing and having fun.
Great. Do you have time for one or two more questions?
Let's go with one more.
One more, okay. Russ?
Give me the one that stumps me.
Okay. Look, I was going to try and go down that same pathway. I just wanted to try and understand in essence what's happening with this cycling process. I know you don't want to go into the details, but is it you're transferring your healing intention into the water? What's
no, cycling has nothing to do with healing.
Okay. All right,
nothing to do with
move on
healing.
to the next question, that's fine.
Has nothing whatsoever to do with healing. It's a mechanical process that you have to wean people off being, you know, magical and special and spiritual and everything else. It's just a mechanical drill and practice that you undergo, and it has nothing to do with healing, but something happens.
Okay. All right.
It's very confusing out there.
I'm confused. Okay.
Yeah, me too. Good that I was clear. If you said I understand what you're saying, then I'd go, whoops, I screwed up.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Bill. That was absolutely fascinating. I really think you have done your job in making it seem so simple and practical and conventional, like you said.
We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, and I'm just so excited that it can be stored. And I love your phrase, love the cancer.
Unless you're
Daniel,
a killer.
did you want? And what, sorry?
I said, unless you're a killer.
Unless you're a killer, yeah, yes.
Yeah, I prefer to heal.
Yeah, yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's so much more. We could be here all day. But you've got a book, The Energy Cure, published by Sounds True Publishers. So can we get that through them and through your website and Amazon? Is it on Amazon as well?
I don't know. And the thing, you know, if you're looking for data, it's pretty outdated. So the thing is 12 years old, so it'll get a plot of how I got here. But it's if you want more recent stuff, you know, 2022, 2021, 2020, you know, like that, then you're going to have to go to the website. And I don't know what Margaret's put up there so far, but, you know, I'm up through, already have some couple in 2022. So I don't know what she has up there. I've heard about websites. I've never seen them.
Oh. Great. Oh, thank you, Bill. I'll put your website on the chat later. Thank you again for your time. I think we've all got a lot out of it.
Good, good.
And
glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Have fun with it. Tear it apart. Try it for yourself and show me I'm wrong. It'd be a beautiful thing.
Yep. Will do. Thank you, Bill. Can we just give him a clap?